the chat. Changing microphones. Is this one any better? Those online.
Yes, I can hear you through that one as well.
Sound check one more time. For those on Zoom.
Okay, can you hear this? Okay, do we have a way to set it so I can so it's not getting Tim, the problem with that projection is it melted everybody's ears in the room. Do we have things adjusted so I can try again without murdering everybody in person? I'm going to try this again. Does this work for everybody?
Julia Miller can hear you clearly.
I'm trying to balance too loud versus Zoom saying we can't hear you is the problem. I support this. I'm just not going to touch it.
Down. Okay. Try again. Try again. I turned it down.
This is a test of the audio system. Did that work on? Okay, cool. I think is that okay online? Yes, it was okay. Okay. Project, everybody.
Welcome to the Sunnyvale Democratic Club endorsement meeting for California Assembly District 26.
Fortunately, you can fly home and didn't get snowed in. Call me when you get settled.
For the endorsement meeting, we're going to ask you to remain muted if you are not recognized. So please, if you are on Zoom, please mute yourself. Thank you.
Right. Let's try again. Okay, our activity today is to determine endorsements for the California Assembly District 26 elections. This meeting is open to the public, but discussion of the candidate interviews and voting is restricted to voting members. If you have a PIN, you are a voting member. If you do not have a PIN, you are not, or you could ask for a verification. Hopefully that has all been done prior to this moment. The Democratic Club of Sunnyvale is committed to providing a welcoming, respectful, friendly, safe, supportive, and harassment-free environment for members and guests. The club expects all leaders, members, and others associated with the club to respect the personal rights and dignity of all individuals so as to create a productive, inclusive environment for all. And this conduct is expected in the room and online, in the chat, everywhere. All right, so first we welcome current and former elected officials who are here today and those currently serving on boards and commissions. Due to time, we're not going to call out individuals, but thank you for attending. And thank you to club board members in attendance for their support in making this hybrid meeting possible and run. All right, we are going to jump right into the candidate interviews and we'll save announcements and other activities for the end. All right, and on Zoom, voting members should be identified. I believe you can change your name to append the word voting to the end. Hopefully that's already in progress. And in the room, voting members should have been checked in and have received a ballot. So if you're in the room and you expect to vote, please make sure you have a ballot, which you can get at the check-in table.
I will note that the first ballot is now active. If you are in the room, you can vote. If you're online, you can vote. However, I highly encourage everybody to not vote until they have heard from all of the candidates and have participated in the discussion. I will go over the process for voting when it is time for after the discussion. So I'm not going to walk people through it now because you should actually listen to the candidates before voting. Thank you.
And we do plan to record the interviews. So if you don't want to be recorded and you're on Zoom, you can turn off your video. Right. And let's see. All right, so let's get started with the candidate interviews. And the order for the interviews was chosen at random. And first interview will be current Sunnyvale City Council member Omar Dean. And Councilmember Dean, please come on up. And at this time, we asked if anyone in the room is a family member or paid staff of any of the other candidates. We ask that you leave the physical room or the Zoom room. All right, and we'll confirm we are recording. Yes, okay.
Oh, perfect.
Martin is the timekeeper in the room, and he's got the
Oh, okay. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
All right, so the format is for each candidate to be interviewed individually and sequentially. The questions for each candidate are the same, and candidates will have the same amount of response time. And as we said, Martin is the timekeeper. I'll be asking the questions. We'll start with a 1-minute opening statement. Following that, there will be 5 questions that were provided to the candidates in advance. These will have a 3-minute response time. Then we'll have a lightning round of 5 questions with 30-second response times. And the candidates have not seen these in advance. And then to close, 1-minute closing statement. Candidates were also asked to respond in writing to another set of questions. And when we got these responses, those were posted on the website. Welcome, Councilmember Dean.
Thank you. And I can say for being in the hot seat, these chairs are actually quite comfortable. So
Yes.
thank you guys for that.
All right, and you can see the timer. All right, so welcome, and please begin with your opening statement.
Thank you. And thank you so much, everyone, for being here and for giving me the space to speak. It's such a pleasure to have been serving on the city council now for 3 years, going into my fourth, and then having spent the last year as vice mayor and also serving on the board of directors for the VTA. I'm really proud of the work that I've been able to work on around housing affordability within the city, transportation, economic development, and environmental sustainability. And a big part of why I decided to run for this seat is because that work doesn't stop at the city level, where we could build all the housing we need to build. We could do all the right things at the city level. But if all of the other areas in our region, if all of the other cities that surround us, if the rest of the state isn't taking part in that, then we don't see our housing prices change. We don't see our greenhouse gas emissions and global warming go down. These things that we've started together and we've worked so closely on that we've been able to achieve here need to keep going. And that's a big part of why I felt the need to see my voice and I think the values that I represent at the state level. And I'm so excited to be running for this seat in order to continue all of those things at that level for everybody. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll start with the first question, which is California and the Bay Area continue to face severe shortage of housing, which has created a devastating homelessness and affordability crisis. What are some things you have done to address this crisis? What is your plan to increase the supply of housing and tackle homelessness and housing affordability if you are elected to represent Assembly District 26?
Thank you. And I'm, like I said, really proud of the work that I've been able to do on the council. Housing affordability and housing production have been some of my biggest issues on the council. I focus a lot of my time around ensuring that we're producing housing across the spectrum of housing, that it's transit oriented whenever it can be, and that we're utilizing mixed use housing. And so that's a big part of my framework. I'm really proud of the Moffett Park specific plan that I've been a champion on, where I remember being one of the people that made a motion to increase the cap on housing for our EIR to 20,000 units. And now we're going to see a build out of 20,000 units of housing, many of which are set aside to be affordable housing. I think those are things that I can point to that I'm unique in my background on. On top of that, when we look at homelessness, when we look at the housing issues that we face, what we know is that the biggest cause of homelessness is the cost of housing. We need to be dealing with these problems at the core, and that's through the production of housing. And we need to be doing it across, like I said, the spectrum of housing, because if we only build one kind of housing and not the others, we're not going to see the benefits that we need, where people at the higher end are going to be competing for the same units at the lower end. So we need to be making sure that along with the developments that we're doing low income housing, that we're doing very low income housing. On top of that, we need to have a pipeline of housing for people who are experiencing homelessness. If you were to take everyone who's on the street today off the street, but you didn't change any of the core issues of what's happening, you're going to end up with just the same number of folks on the street 10 years from now, if not more. And so housing is one big part of that. But if people are able to get into shelters, it's not just about the shelters. You need transitional housing after that, right? Places for people to get used to going back into society, to get stability, and then you need affordable housing. Because again, if we just put people in shelters and then threw them into the housing market we have now, we're not going to see them be able to thrive or survive. On top of that, all of the things that we talk about when it comes to housing also depend on the types of development we're doing and the ways that we mitigate for the externalities of that. If we just increased housing, increase, but we're not talking about traffic mitigation, we're not talking about higher usage of our electrical grid, of other issues that come along with it, we're going to end up with many more problems. So we can densify, we can develop, but we also need to be thinking through the ways that we're doing it and tailoring the state apparatus. One of the things that I've really been fortunate to learn in my time on council is the way that the state plays a role in all of this. And more recently, we're seeing the state take an aggressive stance on putting itself into it. So we need to better understand, well, what works within that model and what doesn't, because it's so new that there's still a lot of kinks in the system. And so on the council level, I've been able to experience that and see that and get very ingrained into it. And I want to go to Sacramento so that I can take that model and make it work better and take my experience working for a city, seeing those results here and apply them to the rest of the area. Because Sunnyvale's been a leader. We've been one of the few cities that's actually doing our part. Now it's on everyone else to do it too. And we need to be making sure that we have someone in the state level who's able to get all the cities to do that.
Okay, thank you. The next question about transportation. VTA continues to underperform compared to other transit agencies. What changes to the management of VTA do you support? In what ways might seamless Bay Area initiatives improve transportation options?
Yeah, and I'm proud on my time on the VTA board of directors to have been one of the voices pushing for more accountability within VTA. Something that we've seen very recently is the overruns on costs and time that are coming out of the BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 project. It's pretty unacceptable that it's costing this much or that it's gone that far over. And according to even a recent Mercury News article we've seen, there are instances where the board itself isn't getting as much information as it otherwise should. So I think there is a role in which the state and other bodies need to be helping ensure that VTA is operating in a way that's fair, in a way that is as it's meant to operate, even in the current structure. I think when we talk about the governing structure of VTA, an important part of that is supporting our employees, because whoever is governing VTA, whether they be from city councils, whether they be directly elected, it's not the elected officials themselves that know all of the science, that know how to operate buses, that know how to do these things. We need a system that uplifts the people who are actually working there to do their work better. Now, when we're talking about the regional aspect of that, I'm a big fan of seamless transit. I'm a big fan of a lot of the things that they've been pushing for. I think there's a reason that Sunnyvale, that VTA itself, and so many others are partnering with Seamless Bay Area around these things. And a lot of those are policies that I think we should push for. Things like seeing transit fares be unified across all of the different transit systems, right? Seeing things like technological improvements go across all the transit systems. So as people are using cards to badge themselves on how they're paying the fare, finding ways that are unified, that we're having our different systems working together and talking together is how we accomplish that. And that's something that I've really seen firsthand being on VTA with the way that we created the new bus route here for North Sunnyvale. You know, we saw the school district, we saw the city, we saw the VTA board, we saw so many other entities and groups. We saw SEE and parents coming together and everyone saying, hey, this is an issue that needs to be fixed. And honestly, I think at first there's a little bit of finger pointing between the school district, the city, and VTA saying, well, this isn't our responsibility, this isn't ours. And during my time in my first year on the VTA board, I really sat down and said, hey, this is a problem we need to fix, right? Like, this is unacceptable that students are having to go through this. Let's work together. Let's bring everyone together. And that's what we did. And we found a solution to an issue by having different agencies and government entities work together instead of apart from each other. And I think when we look at the larger level management of transit and of VTA, we should apply that model for how VTA interacts with Caltrain and so many other transit systems across the Bay Area. And that's really at the heart and soul of Seamless. And I think it's a model that can work and that I'm really well versed in uniquely. And I'm really excited to take that to Sacramento, hopefully.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next question is, what are the top priorities you have for supporting the state's goal of reaching 85% greenhouse gas emissions reduction by 2045?
First and foremost, I think it's fantastic that that's our goal. I think on top of that, we need to not just stop there. I think California has been a huge leader in not just the country, but the world on the work that we're doing around climate change, on the work that we're doing around sustainability. And there are a lot of things that we can be implementing at the state level to get us closer to that goal. Because it's all about not just saying, okay, here's our goal, our work is done. It's about actually being willing to do the hard votes, to put in the political work to get us to do the things that are necessary to make it happen. Some examples of those are working with cities on the policies that they pass for their own constructions, for their own developments, to make sure that they're utilizing higher and higher metrics for how they are holding themselves accountable. We need the state apparatus to actually put some teeth into our laws. One thing I've noticed a lot while I'm working on the city council and while I look at these things is we pass all these great policies and put all these great goals that we expect cities and other agencies to help with, to be a part of, and yet there's no enforcement mechanism. There's no way to actually get them to do it. And so being somebody who's on a city level, I know how that all operates and I know how to make that work. On top of that, we need to be pushing more and more for the ways that we develop to be smart, to be long-term thinking. The best thing we can do to reduce our greenhouse gas footprint is to build our cities and to build our regions in ways that are meant for that. Because right now, when you stay as spread out as we are, when you have the transit systems that we have, everybody has to use a car to get around. Everyone has to use what we already have. We need to be implementing transit-oriented development. We need to be implementing dense housing because those are more sustainable and it helps us get closer to our goals in a holistic way. And that's how we do it, not just sustainably from an environmental standpoint, but sustainably in terms of it actually is done and it's not hollow, it's long term, it keeps going, it sustains. On top of that, I think we need to have an electrical grid and means of getting energy that are renewable and that's prepared for us to switch over away from cars in towards electric vehicles. Because right now, if we all start using electric vehicles, we don't have a grid that is ready yet to handle that load. And so when we talk about these technological solutions that are already starting to happen, we need to be doing the work at our level to get us there, to actually drive those solutions home. And then finally, it's about implementing more and more alternative means of transportations, ensuring that across the state, we have a better bike network, that it's safer, that people are able to move on to these things. These are all ways that we can drive environmental sustainability and keep being that leader nationwide.
Right, thank you. The fourth question, what makes AD 26 unique? What would be your legislative priorities to serve the needs of the district?
I mean, first of all, growing up here in AD 26 my whole life, it's home to me. I think it's home to so many. I think what makes it so unique is that we're the heart, not just of the country, but in many ways of the world. AD 26 is actually one of the largest economic producing engines in the entire state, right? The things that we're doing here in our district are reverberating not just across the state, not just across the country, but across the world. And yet, at the same time, when we're generating so much wealth, families like mine are struggling to buy a home here. Actually, in the first week of the campaign, I had to stop campaigning for a day to help my parents move because my parents, that for the first time ever, the childhood home that I grew up in, which I wasn't living in anymore, but that I grew up in, my parents got priced out of it and they actually just had to move to Santa Clara. And that just goes to show that these issues I've been talking about my whole life, that while I've been on the council around housing affordability, they hit close to home, right? These are things that we're experiencing. And so when I think about what I want to do for the district, all of it revolves around improving our quality of life because more and more people can't afford to stay here. And so we need to be building housing. We need to be building more affordable housing. We need to be dealing with the affordability crisis because even the people that can afford a home here, their children are living at home longer and longer. And then on top of that, there's more traffic on the roads because we don't have the type of transit and transportation benefits that we need. And so people are driving, they're driving on poorly planned, developed areas. So there's more traffic. We need to break that gridlock. We need to be doing policies that change that. And then finally, we need to have an economic area where people can actually grow, where you can start small businesses. Both of my parents are small business owners. My dad runs his dental practice as a small business, as a private practice. My mom used to run a daycare out of our home in Sunnyvale before we had to move. And so seeing their experiences, I can testify to how the small business economy that we have is really the means of our economy as a whole benefiting. And so we need to be creating conditions in which people can start businesses and can be supported and competitive in this area, and not just from the entrepreneurial side, but also from a worker side, where we're helping working families by ensuring that workers have the protections that they need, that they're able to function within our economy fairly so that we can all afford to keep staying here. And all of these issues, and I've seen this on council through my work on council, intersect with each other. When you're dealing with one of them, you're helping deal with the other ones. Because when things are developed in a way that's more smart, that's affordable, guess what? It's also denser. And so then you're meeting your environmental goals. And if you're doing that, you're probably going to be within a more walkable city. You're going to be within places where people can live and work and play in an area that's enclosed. And so their happiness not just goes up, but now they're less reliant on greenhouse gas emissions. And now you're more fuel efficient and now you're more environmentally efficient. And so dealing with all of them holistically and understanding the depth of complexity of these problems, the way I've been able to while I've been on the council, is what allows us to deal with all of them.
Okay, thank you. And the last of the 3-minute questions, what question do you wish we had asked and didn't?
Yeah, it's a good question. I thought a lot about it before. I think honestly, the question I wish I was asked, and then I'm going to answer it, is how are you going to make sure that you are reachable to the constituents? And one thing I think I can own up to, well, during my time in office is that's been my hardest thing. I think I've been trying my hardest to govern well, to read up on policies, to be smart, to do the work. But I've also been working a day job while I'm doing it. I've also been new to it. And I think especially last year when I was working 90-hour weeks, doing campaign work for other people, et cetera, that's where I fell short. And so the first thing is owning up to that and apologizing, because I think that is something that matters to the community. But on top of that, when I look at this race, if I'm elected, a big thing for me is going to be making sure that we are hearing from the community constantly and that we are out there. And so what that's going to look like is both committing right now to monthly office hours while I'm in office, also hosting town halls, not just in Sunnyvale, even though Sunnyvale is the greatest city, we know this, but also across the district. But also, I think the fact that I'm going to have staff that we're going to be able to have a team that's actually there and responsive is key to it. Because one of the downsides of being young and on council is you have to work that day job, right? I have to afford rent at the end of the day. I don't own a home. And so you're forced to do all these things a little bit on your own. I think what this campaign is already showing when people are reaching out to us is having a staff and having a team that's there, and that's going to be a big part of when you're in office in an assembly office, is essential to making sure that you have the infrastructure in place to deal with the inbound, because it's hard, right? There's a lot that comes in. There are a lot of people that need to talk, that have impact, that have thoughts that we're sharing. And on council, even though I haven't been as good at responding, I've been taking it all in, and that's what's led to the work that I did on VTA with the bus route. That's what led to the votes that I've taken around, especially around turf and other things. And yet I think the key piece is going back and actually showing that and talking to people and telling them like, hey, I am listening, I am here for that. And I think that's something that I'm going to really focus very heavily on if I'm elected.
Okay, thank you. All right, and now we'll move to our lightning round of additional 5 questions with 30-second responses. So the first question, what is one key piece of legislation you would propose in your first year as California Assembly member?
I think a big one would be CEQA reform. I think I believe that we are very lucky in the state of California that we had the environmental policies that we have. When CEQA was first introduced, it was something that was leading the way. But since then, it's become a blocker actually to the way that we do development, which is how we need to get to our sustainability goals. So finding a way to make sure that CEQA is more efficient and more effective at its own goals without preventing us from getting the housing that we need, without getting in the way, is going to allow cities and the state itself to deal with our big crisis.
All right. Next is, what is one policy or ordinance adopted in the district by a city or the county that you would like to see expanded statewide?
Oh man, it's so hard to think. We've done so many things in Sunnyvale. I think an ordinance I'm really proud of is probably I mean, it's a little bit wonky. I think the metrics that we have decided to use on council around vehicle miles traveled versus level of service, and taking that even a step further, in general, a lot of the work that we've done in Sunnyvale around the metrics that we're using to measure these things, that's something that I want to apply more district-wide, that I want to apply more statewide. Because as a result of choosing the right metrics and holding ourselves accountable, we've been able to deliver results on our goals better, and that's what we should do statewide.
Great. Third is, what California Assembly committees would you be interested to serve on?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the big ones I'm looking at first and foremost are the health committee that deals with not just mental health, but also we're talking about affordable care for the statewide, for residents statewide. So I think committees that are dealing with health is a big one. The other one I really want to work on is actually public safety, because I think, when I ran the first time, even my catalytic converter got stolen out of my car. I was something I would talk about on the campaign trail. I think people are feeling a lot of the issues around safety. And so that's something that I'd want to spend time working on. And then finally, housing. Housing is a big one, and that's the biggest that I want to focus on.
All right. The fourth one is, what accomplishment are you most proud of in your current elected role?
I think the biggest one would probably be, we're still working on it, but I'm really proud of my universal basic income pilot program. We've worked really hard. Some of the people who have helped us are in the room right now on that, and I'm very grateful to them. We're going to be giving out, our goal is to give out checks of $1,000 a month to $1,500 a month to roughly 100 to 150 low-income families citywide, no strings attached. Because what we notice is when we talk about homelessness or these other issues, people fall into cycles of poverty and then they can't get out of it, because they're stuck there. And so this is a policy that'll help people break that cycle and be able to sustain and survive within our city.
All right. And the last of the lightning round questions you already addressed in your closing or in one of the other questions, but how will you stay informed about the needs of your constituents?
It's a good question. I'm glad it's on there. I mean, there's a reason I was talking about it. I won't repeat just the same things I said before. I think all of those. And on top of that, I think staying true, not just to my own values, but to my roots here in Sunnyvale. While I've been on the council, I've learned quite a bit about our needs. I've worked on all of them. And so staying informed on all of that, on seeing that work through, is a big part of why I'm running. And so when I'm thinking about the legislation I want to introduce, it's a big part of it is going to be all of those connections and relationships I have down here at the city level, and utilizing all of those on top of the things I already mentioned earlier.
All right, and this concludes the lightning round, and you now have the opportunity for a 1-minute closing statement.
Thank you. Well, again, thank you so much, everyone, for the opportunity to be here and for the work that we've been able to do thus far. I think I'm so proud of our city, not just because of how incredible we are here in Sunnyvale, but also because the work that we've done really is leading the way statewide. Sunnyvale is one of the best actors on housing. It's one of the best actors on environmental sustainability. It's one of the best actors on how we're supporting our residents, especially economically. I'm really excited to take that model, to take the work that we've done here in Sunnyvale and take it to the state level. And also through my experiences being on the council, I've really learned how to get this work done. As the only council member that's running in this race, I have a unique background of having worked on housing at the city level, having worked on transportation as a VTA board member, having worked on economic development and on public safety. It's why I'm proud to have the endorsement of the Sunnyvale Employees Association and the Sunnyvale Police and Fire Association, right? Because the people that have seen the work that I've done, that I've been working on behalf of, are proud of the things that we've accomplished, and they want to see that continue at the state level. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Councilmember Dean. That concludes the interview. I really appreciate you coming.
Thank you. Right.
Right.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to transition to our next candidate, who is Trustee Patrick Ahrens. Hi. Right here, yes. And there's a camera right here. Right. And this is going to be my. All right, and we're okay. Okay, moving on, we have Patrick Ahrens, who's a trustee of the Foothill De Anza Community College District. And we will go ahead and get started. So you're going to have 1 minute for an opening statement. There'll be 5 questions with 3-minute response times, and then a lightning round of 5 questions with 30-second responses. And Martin is the timekeeper. He's got the little papers back there. We've got a camera right here, and those on Zoom can see this view here. All right, and are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Cool. So please go ahead with your 1-minute opening statement.
Well, thank you so much to the Sunnyvale Dem Club. It feels like I'm on a talk show here. This is a cool setup. I'm Patrick Ahrens. I'm thrilled to be running for the state assembly. I've worked and lived in this community my entire life, born and raised in Santa Clara. Went to Santa Clara High School where I was the first in my family to go to college at De Anza Community College. From there, I transferred to UCLA and worked in Washington, D.C. for 3 years for then Congressmember Karen Bass. Moved back to the Bay Area after 3 very humid summers and very cold winters to work in the state legislature for the past decade. I now serve as the district director for our local assembly member, Evan Lowe. and just picked up my master's degree in public administration. I have a lot of lived experience in tackling these issues. I used to be homeless. My parents abused drugs growing up. I had a pretty hard upbringing. That has informed my politics, and Martin's telling me to stop. So more to come.
Okay, thank you. The first of the 3-minute questions is, California and the Bay Area continue to face a severe shortage of housing, which has created a devastating homelessness and affordability crisis. What are some things you've done to address this crisis? What is your plan to increase the supply of housing and tackle homelessness and housing affordability if you are elected to represent AD 26?
Good question. It is the thing that I hear most about when talking to residents and on the doors. In addition to the work that I've done in the legislature, what I've done in my own capacity as president of the Board of Trustees for Foothill De Anza is, after passing our bond measure G, we did something historic, which was we allocated $200 million in bond funds for affordable housing for students, faculty, and staff. We're not going to sit here and wait around for the state or the county or the cities. They desperately need help. And I feel like our community college could play a role in supporting our cities and counties and our nonprofit leaders who are tackling this housing crisis. That is the single largest allocation of affordable housing by a community college in the state of California. I want to scale that to the rest of our 115 community colleges. We're going to be building that. We are our own special district. I also have plans we're working right now with the city of Sunnyvale. Just had a wonderful meeting with our wonderful city manager about seeing how we can tackle working in our shelters. Again, we can't just finger point and say, well, homelessness is a county issue, or the city, can approve housing, and we're just an education institution. Half of our students are experiencing homelessness. We can't attract good quality instructors and employees anymore because of this unaffordable housing crisis. We need to get out of our silos and get different government agencies all tackling this regional problem, and it's going to help all of us. I've already done it by allocating those dollars. It was an unpopular opinion at the time, but we pushed and we got it done. I want to see us scale that for the rest of California. Additionally, I'd love to see us work closer with our unhoused community in providing programs at our community colleges, life skills classes, and financial literacy classes. There's so much more that we could be doing in an educational institution rather than just serve the people that come to us. I have a track record of building that. I can't see if I have 1 minute left. I have a track record of building affordable housing. I have a plan to scale it to the rest of the state of California, but we could be doing so much more than finger pointing, of which I see it's all too common now that housing and homelessness are other people's problems. It's all of our problems. We need to treat it humanely, and we need to work with our nonprofit leaders. We need to work with our housing advocates, and we need a lot more communication and education on a local level about how we can be doing being a partner in this, rather than sitting down and complaining and saying there's not enough affordable housing for our students, faculty, and staff. We can scale that. We can do that in a much more efficient process. I'm the only one in this race with lived experience being homeless. It is a #1 issue for me. If I work on anything in my time in the legislature, it's going to be about alleviating the affordable housing crisis. So I'm going to bring my lived experience. I'm going to bring my experience of what I'm already doing on the college board, and I'm going to force the issue in the legislature more fervently.
Right. Great. Thank you. The second question is, VTA continues to underperform compared to other transit agencies. What changes to the management of VTA do you support? In what ways might seamless Bay Area initiatives improve transportation options?
Oh, VTA. I feel like, we need to ensure that we're setting up our transit agencies for success. There's 26, 27 transit agencies in the Bay Area alone, with their different funding models, different governance processes. I support all, if not almost all, of the seamless Bay Area transit focuses. We need to refocus our attention on the usability. We need to have a sort of one easy to use fare process. Many of the people who not only would like to use transportation or do it to get to our football games or get around town the people that actually need it as a necessity, we need to make this easier for them. Part of the work that I've already done, once again, in my own personal capacity, is as a student advocate, we came up with this idea of an eco pass, a free bus pass for students who are coming from the east side all the way to De Anza College because they wanted a good education. They couldn't afford to get there, or they're spending so much of their money on this process. We were told that we cannot provide subsidies for our students. It was during the Great Recession. We couldn't tax ourselves during the Great Recession. Well, in 2 years, we got it done. We were the first community college to introduce this, implement this, directly work with VTA so that they can get subsidized. We did one small fee, and it's free for our entire 30 to 35,000 student body, regardless of you're using it or not. It was $5 a quarter, and it was a free bus pass and light rail pass after that. That's the kind of thinking and sense of urgency that we need to bring to our VTA plans. The governance structure, everyone has an opinion about it. I think that we're not getting our fair share of transit dollars in our area. A lot of it's being sucked in to other regions. I would like to see a more equitable plan. North Sunnyvale is historically underrepresented. It's not getting the transportation dollars. It's not getting the housing dollars. It's not getting the city services, county services that it needs. We need to play a larger role in looking at reinvesting in areas that need it and rely on these transportation services the most. I know that the city of Sunnyvale is taking a leadership role on this. I'm so glad to see that. But again, we need to get out of our silos. What can the community college system can be doing? Let's involve our K through 12 leaders as well to all convene. We need an assembly member. There's such an underrated plan of convening as an assembly member. We need to convene these regional bodies and people who have vested interest in these issues and get them in a room and seeing who can do what budgets do people have. Alone, it's insurmountable. VTA can't solve it itself. We need to bring other regional bodies to this. And yes, governance structures need to be fixed. We need to focus more on the usability of things, but we can't just sit there and blame VTA and our transport agencies. We need to put ourselves at the table to help our students and the people who need and rely on this transportation services the most. Most of us came here in a car, I know, because I couldn't find parking initially. We need to make it easier to use as well.
Thank you for that. The third question, speaking of cars and emissions, what are the top priorities you have for supporting the state's goal of reaching 85% greenhouse gas emission reduction by 2045?
Well, we have a climate crisis on our hands. The governor just proposed some significant cuts to our climate goals. So I'll tell you what is not my priority is not cutting our climate funding in the state legislature if we're ever going to reach it by 2045. 2045 also, by the way, seems very far off. What we need to be investing and prioritizing a lot of this money now if we're going to see the gains that we need by 2045. At our community college level, we made a commitment to be the first community college in the state of California to go all electric and fully decarbonized by 2035. And it's not just about having goals. Our budgets are a statement of our values. If we're not funding our goals at a local level, if we're not funding our goals as a state level, we're never going to reach 85%. And we're not going to reach it if we look at our budget deficits and try to balance the budget on the backs of our climate commitments. And so we're not, a lot of people aren't speaking up about the fact that that was a huge reduction as a legislative proposal in the governor's budget. I'd like to see us step up a little bit more and say that, we understand that we're not the federal government. We can't print money. At the same time, if this is a climate crisis, we need to actually present it as a stronger sense of urgency and speak up. The other thing we've done is we're going to be the first community college to do an all-electric heat pump pool. I was the swing vote to refuse to put gas boilers on campus because there's no way we're going to meet our climate goals that way. Residents need support. We need further grant funding for heat pump technology to place it in our homes, to place it in multi-dwelling units in our apartments. We can't do this alone. The state could be prioritizing way more grant funding to help us with this transition. It shouldn't just be a goal for our cities to do. They need our support. This community is very forward thinking. People are very ready to adopt these strategies. We can't do it without funding. And that's what it all comes back to. So what are my priorities? My number one priority as it relates to climate goals, we can all have climate goals. Those are great. reduction goals to have. But if we're not actually funding these as a state, there will continue to just be goals or aspirations. We need mandates, and we can't have these mandates without fully funding these infrastructure goals. So heat pump technology, funding our school systems, and it's, by the way, it's going to get so much more money for our schools and to use for general fund purposes when they aren't spending so much money on exorbitant costs. The average PG&E user right now has to spend over $300 a month on their PG&E bill. You have all seen it. It's going up and up and up. Imagine how much our schools are having to pay, taking money away from vital basic needs services for our students because they're having to pay exorbitant electricity costs. Those should be the priority institutions that we should be focusing on more so we can free up more money and give. And that's my time, Martin. Thank you.
All right, the fourth question, what makes AD 26 unique? What would your legislative priorities to serve the needs of the district be?
There's so much uniqueness about this newly drawn district in the past couple of years. Sunnyvale is so forward thinking in its climate goals and its housing goals as compared to a lot of the other cities. The city of Cupertino, Sunnyvale, Santa Clara, West San Jose, El Viso is the innovation district. We have some of the highest educated people living in this district, and yet we have people living paycheck to paycheck like myself. We have a 49ers game later today. This district houses our stadium. We have a World Cup and the Super Bowl coming in a couple of years. We need to be making sure that we're getting proper public safety funding and combating human trafficking that we know some of these larger organizations attract. There's a lot of challenges and uniqueness related to this district. It goes all the way up to El Viso and our shoreline. We need to make sure that our levees are protected. We know that there's a rising sea level, and we need to make sure that the underserved communities of this district are also protected. That is historically, again, our northern part of the district is historically underfunded and undersupported. At the same time, extreme wealth, extreme high cost of living in this area. Other areas in the Bay Area are certainly very expensive. Ours is one of the most, and yet we are the cradle of innovation for Silicon Valley as well. So I'd like to see us focus on making government more efficient and looking at tackling some of these larger issues by partnering with the people that are powering our innovation as well. We're siloed still in our government agencies and our bureaucracy in our private sector. When it comes to our transportation services, Apple, Google's, all the tech companies in the world have their own private bus system. Why can't we further integrate that with VTA and help some of our issues once and for all? That should have happened 20 years ago when this was really emerging. We need to start doing that now, and we need an assembly member that can help convene these conversations. That's what it's about. It's not just about what goals, what makes this district unique, and what I'm going to do in Sacramento and what policy ideas I'm going to come up with. What is the assembly member going to do locally to help convene conversations, to bring people together, to help fundraise and get things done on a regional level? That, I think, needs to be a focus just as much as what you want to send me to Sacramento to do. That's what I've already done as a legislative district director. That's what I've done on the Foothill De Anza Community College Board. And that's what we need to continue to do. And I will reclaim some of my time or give some of my time back. Thank you, Martin.
All right, and then the last 3-minute response question is, what question do you wish we had asked and didn't?
Well, that's a good question. I think that I always enjoy the question of, can you say something nice about the other people running in the race? Because I think that there are 6 candidates total. There are 3 strong Democrats. I think that you all have some really hard decisions to make. Each one of us have a very unique background, but I can say how much I like and respect the Democratic candidates running. We all bring something different to the table. We all have different unique experiences and backgrounds, and yet you will be well served by whoever is the ultimate nominee and the assembly member. I, of course, feel like, I have a good case to make for you all, but all of them have deep experience in local government and trying to get things done for their own respective communities and for the community at large. And I think that's really admirable, and you're going to be well served by whoever ends up winning.
Nice. All right, next is the lightning round with 30-second responses to 5
30
questions.
seconds. Oh,
No, gotta keep it short. First question. What one key piece of legislation would you propose in your first year as California Assembly member?
I think it has to come back to our housing and homelessness. We need to provide and look at a grant model back similar to what we've done in the past with our redevelopment agencies of giving block grants to regions and local cities to tackle blighted areas or housing. We need that in a housing model. There's so many unique aspects to each cities and regions that I think that the state of California needs to be pushing our, gosh, 30 seconds. We need more money for our local cities.
All right, next question. What is one policy or ordinance adopted in the district by a city or the county that you would like to see expanded statewide?
I love Sunnyvale's innovative plans to go lead platinum on so many of their buildings. I think we need to just build greener. Not everyone's doing that. Sunnyvale's leading on that. I will also sneak in another one since I have maybe 10 more seconds, is that the city of Santa Clara has its own utility company that they do 40–50% less in utility fees than a lot of the other cities. What can we learn from that and how can we expand it into other areas? I know it's hard to implement that in other cities, but I think there's a lot of the fact that residents in the city of Santa Clara pay on average 40% less in utilities. Let's learn from that.
All right, third one is what California Assembly committees would you be interested to serve on?
Higher education, big surprise. I think business and professions is a big one. Scope and area of practice are important. Healthcare is a big one. Many of you know that my twin brother passed away from pancreatic cancer about a year ago. And he's one of the reasons why I want to run, because he didn't have health insurance outside of his employer and had to work almost until the day he passed away because he couldn't afford chemo treatment. That's wrong. I still have an anger about that. And again, that my lived experience informs why I want to push for and fight for these issues.
What accomplishment are you most proud of in your current elected role?
I think I'm most proud of delivering on $898 million for affordable, for our bond project for Measure G for Foothill De Anza, and $200 million for affordable housing. It's historic. It's non-traditional for a community college commuter campus to do, and it's showing as a model for the rest of the state and the rest of the region that we can also contribute to tackling the homelessness and housing insecurity in our area and not just wait around for someone else to do it.
And last of the 30-second questions, how will you stay informed about the needs of your constituents?
Great question. I think I'm the only candidate in the history of our county of anyone running who's put their personal cell phone number on their ballot statement, going out to every single resident. I might live to regret that, but I want to be accessible and transparent. The people who've endorsed me with over 100 elected officials know that I work with them and I'm accessible. I want to be an assembly member who's accessible. I want to host monthly town halls like Ro Khanna, but more than that, I don't want to just send me to Sacramento and never hear from me. Call me.
All right, that concludes the lightning round, and you'll now have 1 minute for a closing statement.
I just want to say thank you so much for the consideration. Sunnyvale resident right here living in Lakewood. I know the issues affecting North Sunnyvale. I want to focus on the issues that are facing our community. If we focus on helping with an equity lens, the people that are really struggling in this area, it's going to benefit everyone, whether it be our education focus, whether it be supporting more money for our schools. I hope everyone votes for Measure C. Whether it's got to be a regional approach, and that's what I've brought. That's the experience that I bring. It's not just what I've done in the legislature or what I've worked on with my boss. It's my own experience. It's my lived experience. I want to work on these issues for you. I will work my ass off. Sorry for kids. I will work my butt off for you every day. And I promise that I will be accessible and transparent. And I don't have all of the ideas, which is why I want to be accessible, because I know many of you have ideas that you wish there ought to be a law and there's not one. I want to hear from you, and let's change this community together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ahrens, for your statements and responses.
Please call me Patrick.
Patrick. Okay. All right. And we're now going to move to transition to our third candidate. So
Thank you,
really
everyone.
appreciate.
Thank you.
We're going to take just a quick bio break, and we'll resume with the third candidate coming up in a couple minutes. All right, for those in the room, we're going to get started again. And I'd like to welcome our third candidate, Santa Clara County Board of Education Trustee, Tara Sreekrishnan. All right, so the format is that you will have a 1-minute opening statement. Following that, there will be 5 questions with 3-minute responses, and then a lightning round of 5 questions with 30-second responses. Martin is the timekeeper back here. He's got the little visual cues. And are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, please go ahead with your 1-minute opening statement.
Thank you, Crystal. My name's Tara Sreekrishnan. I serve on the Santa Clara County Board of Education. Proud to represent Sunnyvale on that board, and proud to be an on and off member of this Democratic Club for, I think, 7 years, and I'm reminded by Crystal and others to pay my dues. And have been organizing in the party for several years too. Like many of you, I'm sure I've been a state party delegate and a DNC delegate in our party. And so appreciative of all the work that Democrats and this club does to make our society more equitable. And I have worked in every level of local government, city, county, and state, with a focus on policy, budget, and a focus on education and climate change. I now work in the state Senate as a legislative director. So I love getting bills signed into law. That's sort of my forte. And I love being productive when I'm fighting for my community. and I'm running for state assembly because I love this community, but we have many divides that I want to help us close in the state capitol.
Okay, thank you. The first question with a 3-minute response is California and the Bay Area continue to face a severe shortage of housing, which has created a devastating homelessness and affordability crisis. What are some things you've done to address this crisis? And what is your plan to increase the supply of housing and tackle homelessness and housing affordability if you are elected to represent AD 26?
Thank you. And I always say all roads lead back to housing. I think housing's our existential issue in this region. So there are 3 aspects I want to talk about. One is transitional housing. The state can do more to support permanent supportive housing, which I was able to work on back at the county, Santa Clara County. I was a chief of staff, and I actually worked with folks in our unhoused community to help craft our 2020 homelessness action plan, which had a focus on not just permanent supportive housing, but transitional housing. We sometimes forget these short-term solutions to transition folks off the streets into permanent supportive housing, where they have wraparound services, access to mental health and addiction treatment, access to transition into jobs. But we need to make sure we're focusing on that short-term transitional housing as well. Second, I've worked on legislation and got legislation passed to streamline affordable housing and save taxpayer dollars. And I think we can make it easier to build and permit for housing at all income levels, and especially affordable housing. Also in that legislation, we've made sure that the housing we built meets our climate goals. I've worked on building electrification, also on water conservation. So we can build housing in a way that's eco-friendly and that also creates high quality jobs while we're building this housing. I think it comes down to our housing shortage. In this area, we have 6 jobs for every 1 unit of housing. So that in itself is clearly, we have a housing shortage, but it's more than that. It goes deeper into the third point I want to talk about, which is our cost of living crisis. It's deeper than just housing. We have generational cycles of poverty. We have deep divides and inequities in our community. And I've been working on getting to the root of that. And one of the initiatives I've been working on is guaranteed basic income. And I know we talk about that in our community, and I'm proud to have worked on programs to launch guaranteed basic income for some of our most vulnerable populations. So back at the county, that included guaranteed basic income for our transition age foster youth as they head into adulthood, and now starting this summer for our unhoused high school students. And that's in partnership with Supervisor Ellenberg, and was able to work behind the scenes to secure state funding to start that program. And we're bringing that statewide. And I'm proud to be the only person in the state of California to be staffing the only guaranteed income bill in the state of California, SB 333. And that program is going to bring guaranteed income to 15,000 homeless high school students in their transition. And now this is a politically viable concept, which is great, but the real obstacle is the bureaucracy. It's working behind the scenes to fight the red tape. There are not statewide systems of support for our McKinney-Vento youth, our unhoused youth. So a lot of that work is fighting the bureaucracy behind the scenes and not taking no for an answer.
Okay, thank you. The next question.
Just
VTA
rename me on there too. Well, I'm going to see if I can get it to do anything. It just says rename, and
That thing says
oh, a new name below. Okay.
Right, sorry for that interruption. The next question. VTA continues to underperform compared to other transit agencies. What changes to the management of VTA do you support? And in what ways might seamless Bay Area initiatives improve transportation options?
Thank you. Well, I think it's about time we invest in buses and zero emission buses and making buses an inclusive and viable transportation option. Countries across the globe are doing that, and we can do that right here. in terms of management at VTA. So our office led an audit for the city of San Jose to look at the homelessness programs and the funding, state and federal funding, and how dollars were translating into actually getting folks housed. How much was used for actual services? How much was used for administration? I would be open and would want to pursue an audit at VTA through the Joint Legislative Audit Committee. I think it would be good for our community. It'd be good for staff. It'd be good for administration. It would help in terms of accountability and transparency, especially if you've been reading the news recently around what's going on at VTA. I also want to mention a few years ago was able to work with folks across our community to declare a climate emergency at VTA, a first of its kind for any transit agency in the nation. It's led to a climate adaptation and action plan at VTA, and I'd want to bring that work statewide as well. You know, in terms of Seamless Bay Area, I think I'm very open and supportive of the idea for more integration. You know, it could lead to more efficiency, you know, reducing administrative costs, making ridership, increasing ridership, making the user experience more friendly. But there are a lot of unintended consequences that we want to make sure don't happen. We want to make sure we don't delay services. We don't have inequity in services when we're looking at this integration, right? But there are also things short term that Seamless and that initiative can help us with in the short term, and that's wayfinding, standardized mapping, looking at real-time traffic transit data, and we can take that into account right now. And just want to end by saying I'm very honored to be the only candidate in this race endorsed by our VTA transit workers. Very honored for that endorsement and have been able to work with them over the years. You know, I really consider them heroes. They kept things running during the pandemic, and they also endured the deadliest mass shooting in the Bay Area. So was proud to help in my very little way to secure state funding so they could recover and rebuild during both of those tragedies. So want to end with that.
All right, thank you. The third question, what are the top priorities you have for supporting the state's goal of reaching 85% greenhouse gas emission reductions by 2045?
Thank you so much. Well, I've dedicated my life and work to climate leadership. I'm proud to be the climate champion in this race. You know, I started a nonprofit several years ago called Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action. We have a Sunnyvale Youth Climate Action team that's often speaking up at your school board and city council meetings. And I will give a plug for 5 years in a row. They've won the City of Sunnyvale Student of the Year Award, which is really remarkable. And so I think it starts from the ground up, you know, investing in our children and their education. We were able to make climate change and education a requirement for our public school students just last year. At the County Office of Ed, I've been working to support our climate action programs and outdoor learning and professional development. And I really made that a priority from day one on my board and got some side eyes from some of my colleagues about why am I talking about climate change each board meeting. But, you know, just some years later, it's a top 3 board priority and top 3 priority for our administration. And folks are really seeing the value in high quality environmental education and climate action opportunities for our students. So I'd want to bring that work statewide. Another initiative I've worked on, I've served with some folks in this room on the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Customer Advisory Group. And I think we need to bring community choice energy statewide and incentivize cities to adopt community choice energy. You know, it's a program that puts power back into the hands of consumers and helps us push to renewable energy. So that would be a second priority. And the last priority I'd want to mention, you know, I've been able to work with advocates in our community. We held the largest polluter in Santa Clara County accountable, Lehigh Cement, after years. And now they're finally looking at alternative uses at that site that will protect public health and be better for the environment. And we can take that same tenacity and energy statewide. I think we need to end our emissions crisis and end our dependence on fossil fuels. And that starts with not permitting new oil and gas wells. So those would be 3 of the things I've worked on locally that I'd want to bring statewide. And, you know, I bring that tenacity that you can see in my track record of serving on the Board of Ed and making climate change and climate literacy one of my top priorities for the county.
Okay, thank you. Question 4 is what makes AD 26 unique, and what would be your legislative priorities to serve the needs of the district?
Thank you so much. Well, I definitely would have to say it's our diversity and our strength in our diversity that makes us so unique. And it's part of the reason why I love this community. You know, I've lived in this district my entire life. I'm a daughter of immigrants. They immigrated here from India. Went into a lot of debt, worked multiple low wage jobs. I know out of college, I worked multiple jobs 7 days a week too, but they did it because they wanted to stay here. They wanted access to high quality jobs. They wanted their children to have access to a good education. I started volunteering because of my mother. She was a classified school employee at our local schools in CUSD and Fremont Union High School District. And I've started volunteering with her. I think our strength is in our diversity, and I think AD 26 can be a model for the state and the country and the world on how we can find strength in our diversity, how we have when we have diversity in thought, diversity in leadership, we can make great things happen for our community. Another unique thing about AD 26, half of our population's Asian American. We have one of the largest populations for Asian Americans in any assembly district in the state. You know, I'm an Asian American woman. I've worked in our state capitol. I've faced sexism, discrimination, harassment. And when I go into these rooms, I have to work 200% to get into these spaces and to be in these leadership circles where I can really make change for my community. I was proud to be the first Indian American Chief of Staff at the County Board of Supervisors and the first Indian American and South Asian American on our County Board of Education. And I will not complain that I have to work 200 times or 200%. Sometimes it feels like 200 times, 200% harder because it just makes me fight harder for our community, and very proud to live here.
All right. And the last of the 3-minute questions. What question do you wish we had asked and didn't?
Thank you. Well, I love the questions. So good on whoever on the board came up with those. And the question, you know, there are a lot of great Democrats in this race. So the question I want to answer is, what distinguishes me from my opponents? That's sometimes the question I get knocking on doors. So there are a few things I can answer with. One is I've worked in every level of local government at the city, county, and state. So when I'm crafting state legislation, I think about how is this going to affect the city of Sunnyvale? How is this going to affect the county of Santa Clara? You know, we can make new mandates and new goals, but are we giving our local governments the resources to reach these goals? The second thing I'll mention, I'm the only candidate in this race. I manage legislative packages. I manage bills from the very beginning to a conversation like this, although this conversation is very one-sided. But through coffee conversations and bringing those voices to the Capitol through every committee process, through every budget committee process, through removing opposition where I can, which is what I'm known for, and also persevering even if there is opposition, because you don't always want to remove every opposition. So that would be another thing. You know, I'm the only candidate in this race that's worked with community members to stand up a local successful nonprofit from the ground up. And I like to work in the community in a very grassroots way. And I like to work behind the scenes, although I also am having a very positive experience, having a very public role these last few months. And then, you know, the last thing I'd say, I'm the only Democratic woman in this race. I think when women and underrepresented groups have a seat at the table, we can really shift the policy conversation in a positive way. You know, we haven't had a woman represent this area in the assembly in 15 years. We only have one woman in the assembly representing Santa Clara County and 5 men. We have no Asian American women in the assembly representing the Bay Area, which is pretty crazy because 1 in 6 people in the Bay Area is an Asian American woman. And I think, you know, having that also distinguishes me. And I want to end by listing off some of the Sunnyvale women that have supported this campaign. Linda Sell, our Sunnyvale councilwoman, Sunnyvale School Board President Isabel Jubes Flamerick, Sunnyvale's trustees Nancy Newkirk and Michelle Maginot, former Sunnyvale trustee Reed Myers, our very own Sunnyvale centenarian Sue Barbieri, Nancy Tivell, former ED of Sunnyvale Community Services, Sunnyvale climate champion Barbara Fukumoto, Sunnyvale library trustee Mina Jutikonda, and our former Sunnyvale Students of the Year, Perry Plantenberg, Elisa Floyd, and Natalia Esparza. These are all women I admire, so thank you for letting me take that opportunity to thank them.
All right, so that concludes the 3-minute questions. We'll move into the lightning round with 30-second responses, and there are 5 questions. The first one is, what one key piece of legislation would you propose in your first year as California Assembly member?
Thank you so much. Well, I see a budget proposal and a legislative proposal. So I'll speak on both. One is, believe it or not, we spend more on our corrections, a lot more than on our UCs and CSUs in the state of California. I think we need to shift those priorities. And if we shift that money to education, we'll have to shift less in correctionals. You know, sometimes we forget the underlying causes of violence, crime, and a lot of these issues. And I didn't get to say the legislation, but recruiting and retaining classified school employees. And I'd bring my mom to the state capitol and we'd cross the bill together.
All right. Next question is, what is one policy or ordinance adopted in the district by a city or the county that you would like to see expanded statewide?
Our safe storage ordinance in Santa Clara County, which I was chief of staff and in the office that we passed that in, was able to work a bit with San Jose Moms Demand Action, my own moms in San Jose Moms Demand Action. So I'd want to bring our safe storage ordinance statewide.
Nice. Third one is, what California Assembly committees would you be interested to serve on?
Assembly Education Committee. No surprise there, deeply rooted in education. And I currently monitor Senate Education Committee because my boss, Senator Cortese, serves on that committee. And so I get to review all the bills in the Senate Ed Committee and would want to serve on Assembly Ed.
All right. And the fourth one, what accomplishment are you most proud of in your current elected role?
Definitely all of the work we've been doing to expand our environmental literacy team and programs across the county. You know, that I was the very loud, obnoxious voice to expand climate change literacy. And it took a bit of good trouble and good organizing and advocacy and community leaders coming out and students coming to speak out. But we have professional development now. We have events, opportunities for teachers and educators to engage, and most importantly, our students.
All right. And then last of the lightning round questions is, how will you stay informed about the needs of your constituents?
Thank you. Well, I would do what I do now, which is regular meetings with folks, especially we call it interim recess in the state legislatures, where we take in everyone's ideas and then think about our bill package. So I'd continue to do that. And I'd also want to, which I'm starting now on my campaign, is develop advisory boards for different issues. So right now I have a group of climate environmentalists that have helped me craft my plan, which you can read on my website.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes the lightning round, and I still have 1 minute for a closing statement.
Well, thank you so much, Crystal. You have the best president for any Dem Club in the world. So I want to thank you, and just want to give a thanks to the Sunnyvale Dem Club and for all that you do and for getting involved in this race. I'm calling my campaign a campaign on steroids. I'm calling everyone on Christmas, New Year's, and it's a marathon and a sprint because it's just been a few months. But I want to thank everyone in the room. You know, folks I've talked to have just been so positive and so kind and so warm, and definitely some of the nicest people I've met are here in Sunnyvale. So thank you.
All right, thanks so much for your answers and comments. Really appreciate it. And this concludes the interview, and we're going to move on to the next part of our meeting. All right, I think we can end the recording now. All right, and we'll welcome Martin Pine, our political director.